Welcome. Clowns, playing cards, toy soldiers, psychotic schoolboys, and rampant racism to episode 320 of Unearthly Podcast. Streaming live on the 4th of September 2019, and oh my god, I'm losing my voice already. And featuring The Celestial Toymaker, written by Brian Hales and David Tosh, and starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, Peter Purvis as Stephen Taylor, and Jackie Lane as Dodo Chaplet. I'm your host for this season, Randy Ronson McCulloch. And with me on the panel tonight is our technical director, Mad Matt Winchell.
I live.
And Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black.
It almost sounded like a Joker promo for a second.
Welcome, clowns, playing cards, toy soldiers, psychotic schoolboys, and rampant racism. Yes, it did. Tim the Enchanter Sheridan will be on later. He is currently at work and will show up probably sometime after the news.
Roughly, since we're also a little bit late to begin with.
Yeah.
We may need to do some stalling.
We don't need to do that much stalling. We already stalled already for half an hour.
Yeah. Oh. So, how's your week been, everyone?
My week started off chaotic on Monday. Went to visit family, got to see an aunt I don't get to see very often, I believe. Yeah, she's the one that lives in Sweden. She's visiting the Appleton area for a couple of days, because I believe we also have an extended family up there somewhere. And I believe she's going to be moving on again somewhere else. She like takes the summer almost every year to go visit, because again, most of her family lives in Sweden now.
Okay. Yeah, the only relative I know I have outside of the U.S. Is a cousin of mine who lives in England and works for the BBC, and yet can't get me any insider information on Doctor Who. So what good is he?
I think I have some relatives in Germany, but I've never met them and I don't know their name.
Well,
Bastard sent me pictures from the set of Doctor Who, and I'm like, fuck you!
At least show some details.
Well, it was just him standing on the freaking TARDIS set, and I'm like, God damn you bastard!
Brag some more.
I had never before ever wanted to kill one of my relatives and commit identity theft until that moment. And I'm sitting there looking at those pictures going, just wait till you come home, fucker. I've got a shallow ditch waiting for you.
They won't find you before I'm gone. But as for my aunt who lives in Sweden, she and her husband are still originally from Wisconsin, and they had their two kids here before they moved to Sweden when my cousins were in their teens. Like their early and mid-teens, I think, is when they finally moved over there. So they're still technically U.S. locals, but they still spend most of their time abroad.
Yeah. My cousin comes back every, couple of years. Big family reunions, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's last time I think I saw him was, I want to say 2012 or 2014. Was shortly after we started the podcast, I think. We had a big family reunion out in Racine, Wisconsin, which for people who don't know is just south of Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And I have several relatives that live out there, and it was at one of their houses. So we had a kind of a meet and greet and saw what everyone else is up to.
Yeah.
And I knew he worked for the that he worked for the BBC at that point, but he was working in New York.
Mm.
And then apparently sometime afterwards, he got transferred to BBC proper in London, or BBC Wales. And I'm like, you asshole. Everything I want out of life. Uh, well, my week's been kind of weird. It's been kind of good, then kind of bad, and then crap. Um, so, um, most of the week went okay. We did most of the shopping, everything. I changed medications last week from my blood pressure medication changed from something called valsartan to something called Entresto. And
Okay.
for the second half of the week, I had transition issues.
Mm.
I got dizzy when I sat up, um, and I was a little nauseous, and my sleep schedule got all messed up because of dizziness and nausea and stuff. But that, sorted itself out after a couple of days. And over the weekend, I was feeling pretty good. In fact, I was feeling particularly good on Monday when Bob called us in early to Epic to do our Monday game, and we did pretty darn good. A bunch of level 2 people fighting a mind flayer and actually kicking its ass pretty hardcore. If it did one thing that would have killed us all, but we all made our int save, so we're like, okay. Eventually, the mind flayer had to leave.
Everybody,
Like,
the whacking sticks now.
well, it's what happens when you've got 2 warlocks with Eldritch Blast.
That'll help.
Yeah, and at least I have my Eldritch Blast fine-tuned to pretty much max damage. So, you've got Hex, which gives you an additional damage, plus I have this special Warlock feat that gives me, I get to add my Charisma bonus to damage, and yeah, it got pretty nasty. I'm sitting there like, 19 points of damage, Bob. He's like, what?
Challenge me harder. Not that hard. As you run for the
I looked it up
basilisk.
later. The Mind Flayer apparently only has 80-some hit points, so if I'd hit it 4 times, I would have killed it.
Yeah.
I hit it twice, and the other guy hit it once. So it was pretty far down there. We messed it up pretty hardcore.
The only time I've wrangled with a mind flayer was in our second edition D&D game, and I think we were somewhere like around level 6. I want to say somewhere between 6 and 8, and even then we had like full-on magical gear because our DM is just like, you people are going to die here out in the outer plains if I don't just start shoveling you stuff here.
Yeah, my character might as well have been naked because no magical gear, no armor other than frickin' mage armor. So.
Oh, and I didn't mention the fact that my character at the time was a drow, so they took particular interest in her, and she managed to dodge all their psychic attacks and went, fuck you with a lance.
But anyway, yesterday I was basically spending the day mostly relaxing, reading, etc. And my left leg started acting weird. It would suddenly, I would just get like, my leg would hop and it'd have a sudden shooting pain down the leg. I'm like, what the hell's up with this? And then I went and rolled over to try to see if it was just I was in a bad position. And my right foot went hop.
Ooh.
And suddenly there's an intense pain in my right foot. And so today I had to go to physical therapy, where they usually have me walk my ass on a treadmill. Well, my physical therapist, Michaela, heard what happened, told her where the pain was. She's like, you're not getting on the treadmill.
No.
That would be a health and safety hazard. You're going to want to go into urgent care or call your doctor. So I have to go in at frickin' 10:40 tomorrow morning to see a doctor to check to make sure my foot's not broken.
Yeah, because it sounded like your foot did a hell of a number all of a sudden. If it ain't broken, then it did some sort of weird stretch thing, and that's not good either way. It's going to take a while to mend.
My foot isn't hurting at the moment, which is weird.
Like I said, I think it might have been a muscle spasm or something, but it did something real funky there.
Can you still feel it at all? Like, does it move and stuff?
Yes, I'm moving it. Okay. It's fine. It's fine rotating. I stood up and went to the bathroom like, an hour ago, and it was fine. So
My guess, maybe, like, don't quote me on this, I'm not a doctor, is that maybe it's another reaction from the switch in meds, and you're having a muscle spasm.
either that or I was just like dehydrated as hell. That could be
That
too.
is also a possibility on top of that, yeah.
With me on freaking diuretics, killer diuretics. If I don't get the maximum amount of water I'm allowed in a day, yeah, I can dehydrate myself pretty freaking quick.
Yeah. Gotta make sure you're hydrated, especially when it's still a possibility of warm weather these days. You need to keep that up.
Not today.
Not today. Today is actually kind of nice.
Today is like freaking fall. It's like, what the hell's going on? It's September. It should still be mostly warm. Why is it I have my fan on minimum and I'm cold in my room? Why did I
I'm with
have to get
this.
my comforter down from the freaking closet to stay warm?
Talking about fans, so I'm very glad that fall weather is starting, because I just happened to wake up one morning and my fan was no longer working,
Oh, I hate it when that
which would have
happens.
been very miserable if we were still having 90-degree nights
Oh, yeah.
as we were 2 weeks ago.
Let me tell you a little story, Bill, about what happened, I think, back in the first time I moved in with Aaron. When we were in that tiny little studio apartment over on the other side of the building. During the middle or early to middle part of August, when we had a freaking heat wave that was like 100 to 110, our air conditioner burned out. And Aaron at that point didn't have a fan. We had to go out and buy one.
Mm.
And it didn't work too well in that little apartment. Trust me. Both of us were basically sitting around the house going, oh my God, it's hot.
Just swapping out who gets to sit in the shower for the next half hour.
Just about.
So that kind of segues into my own week, where
Mhm.
KFC wants to take up all of my time, and school wants. I probably shouldn't have said where I work, but
Yeah, I think you've mentioned a
we've heard,
couple times already,
I think
so.
we've heard it before, Bill.
and school wants to take up all of my time. Luckily, now that the semester's in full gear and my on-campus jobs are starting, I'm really putting my foot down and saying, no, you can't have all of my time at work, because it's my last year and I don't want to fail my classes.
Gotta tell them at some
Your
point.
last year. After that, you're
Yeah.
going elsewhere. Do you know
Yes,
where
and
yet?
no. So it's most likely going to be a doctoral program, although I'm applying for a few alternative things as well. But yeah, the farthest away is UCLA, the closest is University of Connecticut, and there's another 10 in between.
Still looking at Madison?
No. If I was still looking clinical, Madison would be near the top of the list, but their experimental program doesn't quite match up with what I'm doing.
Mm.
Damn it. We would have loved to have you in town.
Mm-hmm.
Would have given us
That
somebody else to hang out with.
that said, one of my top schools, I don't know, well, actually, I don't know how far this is from you, but one of the top schools I'm looking at is in Chicago, which I think
That's about 3 hours
it's
away.
closer. Okay.
Yeah, it's not terrible from Madison.
3-hour drive instead of 3-hour flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done that to go to cons.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Done that plus going to other people's homes before we go to the con.
what school is it? Because I'd like to know if it's on the north side or the south side of Chicago. Because that's the difference between 3 hours and 5 hours.
Oh,
Probably doesn't remember off the top of his head.
well, I've never physically been there. I've only just seen their like researchers at conventions.
Well, that's why he's
conferences and
asking
stuff.
for a name.
Yeah, because I can
Oh,
look it
sorry.
up on a map.
Did my voice cut out while I was saying it? Northwestern is the name of the school.
Oh, Northwestern. I didn't think that was in Chicago proper.
I was told it was, but I didn't.
It's in
confirm that.
Evanston. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's in Evanston, which is just outside of Chicago to the north.
Oh, that makes sense. My advisor told me it was in Chicago, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know that," and then I never confirmed.
Well,
Okay, yeah,
it's close enough to be considered part of Chicago. In other words.
no, but if you go there, we're obligated to hate you because that's one of our Big Ten rivals.
Oh,
Well,
I mean, I'm not going to be on a football team. I
I
promise
know,
you
I know, I know.
that.
still punch you in the
And,
shoulder.
and you're not one of our ultra enemies. You're not like freaking
I
Minnesota.
was about to say you're not Minnesota or anything.
You're not Minnesota or Iowa, which are Wisconsin's two big rivals. I know, because those are the ones that they have items they battle over. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
At
I
multiple
think the
levels we
other
battle
school I'm
over.
looking at that's vaguely in that part
mind you,
farther away is Ohio University.
Ohio or Ohio State.
Ohio, not Ohio State.
Okay,
Ohio State is on the schools a list of schools I was considering, but I think it didn't make the cut of top 15.
Mm.
good, because if there's any school that I personally hate, it's Ohio State University.
Why is
And
that?
that's because all of their ads and everything basically make them out to be a bunch of smug bastards.
Oh,
I
okay.
also knew somebody back when I lived in California who was from Ohio State University, and every day it's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna beat you to the Rose Bowl." I'm like, "No, you're
Oh.
not." He was an arrogant ass.
Hey,
But
Bison Rollspell, spin on it.
any school that advertises themselves as the Ohio State University,
Mm.
I'm just like, and they have to use the.
Yeah, that's when you
I'm
raise an
like,
eyebrow and go,
See,
get real.
yeah.
and that's part of what it makes a decision hard. I've never seen any of those advertisements or anything, so I only know them from looking up their social psychology program.
Well, we get them a lot because, my mother used to have Big Ten Network.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd get all the other adverts for all the Big Ten colleges.
Right.
Mm.
So, and Ohio State University is another one, another Big Ten, as is Michigan State, Iowa, Kansas, or is it? No, it's
Oh,
University of
that's
Nebraska.
right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. U of Michigan is on my list, not Michigan State.
Well, I can't remember if University of Michigan, what school they are, as far as rivalries.
Mm-hmm.
But University of Michigan is weird because you basically, if you want to get from Michigan um, to Wisconsin, you either have to take a ferry or you have to go all the way down through Chicago, and that's turns that from what would have been a nearby drive to like 16 hours.
Gotcha. So it turns it from a drive to a flight.
Oh, you can still drive it. Trust me, people do. It's just a day drive instead of a few hours.
There are few things I would opt to drive 16 hours for. I'm from New England.
Yeah,
remember.
this is
I'm not from the flat part of the country. I'm from New England, where we drive 4 hours, or well, okay. The longest drive I've ever been on was a 13-hour drive to South Carolina. But
The longest drive I've been on was the one from Wisconsin to Florida.
oh, Michigan University is a Big Tenner. They're the Wolverines,
Mm.
and they're in Ann Arbor, which is the southeastern part of Michigan near Detroit. Um, so yeah, you would have to basically go down through Gary, Indiana, and up through Chicago to get there. Other than that, I think there's a couple of ferries that go through like from central Michigan to central Wisconsin. Either way, it would be a hell of a drive to get here.
gotcha.
Northwestern University, however, isn't that far. Because that's just taking 90 down to Arlington Heights and then getting on Eastern Road, and we're there. And I know the 90 route to Arlington Heights. That's about, we used to go there to go to Rosemont, which is where Anime Central was.
Mm. Oh, speaking of our last week, by the way, you kind of took over when I curtailed family get together. The family get together part was actually kind of short lived. It was mostly just for lunch. my big thing after that was since I was in Appleton, I got to go to big stores and I got to go to Best Buy. I spent $60 on my new headset. So Randy, think of your headset, but you know how you have those circular spinning things for your ear covers?
No.
Don't you have the weird circular things that you have to adjust get the headset on?
Um.
I thought all
Well,
the
they're not
Plantronics
spinny
did.
thing. Well, these are. I'm on. Remember, I'm on the rig set now, not the old Plantronics that I used to be.
Oh, well, think the old Plantronics that had the spinning things so you could put it on
Mm-hmm.
and get rid of those spinning things.
Mm.
Cause that's what broke last time. Matter of fact, I think that's what broke for you twice, didn't it?
Possibly. I have
At least once.
this. The rig is a completely different setup.
But yeah,
I'll
it's a
have to show it to you next time you're in town.
yeah. But I think those old Plantronics, it's a very similar release for the ear covers. But that's thank God there's no spinning things, and that's also again microphone off to the side. Not that I use it. Comfortable. It fits my head a little bit better than the Plantronics did, but still is a little bit snug. But if the Plantronics are anything to go by, it'll break in eventually, and not actually break, as opposed to a plastic spinner thing like last time. Again, but also while I was there, I found the 2018 Halloween movie on sale for $12, I think it was. So I grabbed it, and it's the Blu-ray with DVD and digital version for only $12. I'm like, sure, give me that.
So,
Keeping
don't
up
want
my
to
franchise.
try to influence your decision, Bill, but you realize that if you go to Northwestern, it's probably maybe a 45-minute drive to Chicago TARDIS.
That's a good point.
There you go. We now
Aaron and I
you need a
consider
big
it.
enough apartment. We have a place to crash over the weekend.
It's still going to be a bitch to get in. It's down, I believe, in Lombard, which is kind of the western part of Chicago, like way west. Um, like Evanston is like way north. Lombard is way west. But
Gotcha.
and it's still $90 to get into the thing.
Mm.
But yeah,
But if you volunteer,
being able to though to see some of the guests that are at Chicago TARDIS
I need to
would
get
be.
something signed by Tom Baker.
I don't think he travels anymore.
Damn.
I know Paul McGann is there this year.
Mm.
So is one of the current companions. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Wish I could go. Can't afford it.
I could get the TV movie signed by Paul. I think I actually have a physical copy now. I can't remember for sure
Also,
now.
congratulations on getting us back to Doctor Who.
I thought,
Slowly bringing us back
what
around.
would be the benefits of going to Chicago? Oh, well, yeah, Chicago TARDIS.
Ta-da.
Anyway, I think we've stalled enough.
For
On
sure.
tonight's show, we've got news and birthdays, a bit of geek talk. Bill, I don't think has been able to backwatch anything yet, considering he's so busy.
Right.
So, view of shame. We had a YouTube comment that we will discuss briefly and reply to from something we did a few weeks ago.
Yes, we'll do
And
those
then
on the show, folks.
the episode summary, our review, final thoughts, and our ratings. So, first of all, let's go to birthdays. The first birthday we have is one of our own on the 30th of August. It was Bill's birthday.
Yes.
He turned 31. How does that feel?
Not that different from 30, to be honest.
Yeah, that was my opinion.
Ah, Bill, you're still the young pup of this group.
Which I think this is the only gathering that I'm ever in that I can say that about. So,
Why, do you feel like the old guy everywhere else?
as an undergrad, I am, if not the oldest person in the room, I'm usually one of the top 10% of the oldest people in the room.
Well,
Uh,
you're still young here.
mhm.
I mean, I'm in my frickin' 40s. Matt, how old are you?
I'm in February. I'll be 4 years as senior again.
Mm. So you'll be 35.
Yup.
Halfway through the 30s.
Halfway there. Oh.
You missed the comment that I had when I hit 33. And that was somebody told me, "Congratulations, you can be reasonably certain your life is a third of the way over."
Oof.
I'm like,
Wow.
"Wow, fuck you." Not what you want to hear. I'm like, "Ouch." Anyway, on the 1st of September, the day all the little kids go to Hogwarts, is the birthday of Bern Gorman, who played Owen Harper on Torchwood. He turned 45. In a related birthday, the 4th of September was the birthday of Kai Owen, who plays Reese Williams on Torchwood. He turned 44. Uh,
Damn, Gwen, you went for the older one.
yeah, I know. She then married the younger one. But God, that's weird. She'd have to pick out birthday presents on the same week. Oh. Anyway, happy birthday, Bill, Bern, and Kai. And from there, we go to a section we haven't had in a while,
Yes.
and this is kind of a big one,
A
everyone.
Oh,
very
yeah.
big one. It is a sad day in the history of Doctor Who. Terrance Dicks, the great writer, has passed on. Dicks was born in London's East Side in 1935, right before World War II. Following the war, he finished his education at Cambridge and served for 2 years in the British Army. Malcolm Hulke, a friend and mentor figure, got him his first television job writing for The Avengers. That's the BBC Avengers, not
Mm-hmm.
the
Yep.
Marvel ones. He started work in 1968 as an assistant script editor in the serial The Seeds of Death.
So that's
It,
his Doctor Who work, by the way.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
He had to rewrite much of the serial to make it usable. He was promoted shortly after and wrote Patrick Troughton's final serial, The War Games, during which he was involved in choosing the next Doctor, John Pertwee. It wasn't long after that that Barry Letts took over as executive producer, and the two worked in tandem throughout the Pertwee era. They both left at the same time at the end of Pertwee's final serial, Planet of the Spiders, where they introduced the next Doctor, Tom Baker. While he stepped down as script editor, Dicks was commissioned to write several serials over the next 8 years, including such classics as The Brain of Morbius, Horror of Fang Rock, and State of Decay. His final written serial was the 20th anniversary special, The Five Doctors. After his tenure on Doctor Who, he created a short lived series, Moonbase 3, and wrote for Space 1999. He worked as assistant producer to Barry Letts on BBC's Sunday Classic and later became producer himself. And of course, he was also the most prolific writer for the Target Doctor Who novelizations, writing over 60 of them, bringing the series to life in prose. Dicks died on Thursday, August 29th, at the age of 83, and is survived by his wife and 3 children.
That's huge because Terrance Dicks was also a major voice on like the DVD behind the scenes stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Frequently, yeah.
I had thought he had died a while ago, but then I remembered I
We
heard,
always keep correcting you. Yeah, now we can't correct you anymore.
yeah, now he's gone. And I think he's the last of the big writers from the classic era, the big writers
Big writers, yeah.
to have passed on.
There's still plenty of them that did stories here and there, but he was one of the last ones that did a big chain of them.
Yeah, I think the only other writer that's left is Sayward, and nobody cares about
Ouch.
him. I'm
We're gonna
sorry,
get to that
his
later.
writing was so dystopian. It's just like,
Well, his writing was very samey for the time, but yeah.
no, dystopian as in very dark future,
Yeah,
very,
a lot of sci-fi in Britain was dystopian at the time.
yep, just kind of makes me bitter. All right, so tip of the hat and a bow to Terrance Dicks. Leaving the set for the last time. Oh, that's going to hurt for a while. All right. BBC Video has announced the next Doctor Who serial season on Blu-ray. Season 26, the final season of Doctor Who, is next on the list. This set includes the 4 serials Battlefield, Curse of Fenric, Ghostlight, and Survival. Bonus features included are rare restored extended cuts of most of the episodes, 5.1 surround and isolated scores, Behind the Sofa, a behind the scenes, Showman, The Life of John Nathan Turner, The Making of The Curse of Fenric, In Conversation, The Writer's Room, Becoming the Destroyer on the makeup of creating the monster from Battlefield. So Doctor Who Season 26 Blu-ray is due out on Monday, December 23rd. I remember we were impressed by the Destroyer.
His animatronics, if it was animatronics, was actually pretty good.
No, it was makeup.
It was definitely makeup. So yeah, he was not a bad makeup job. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
And also, as part of that news, did you guys? I haven't watched it yet, but did you guys see all the news about the trailer for that collection?
I watched the trailer.
I watched the trailer. Yeah.
I didn't know there was news behind the trailer.
Well, the fact that, from my understanding of everything I've seen, it is the most up to date depiction of Ace, this time in live action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically just Sophie Aldred.
Okay.
It showed her.
Yes, yeah. Actually, here's a good question, Bill. Have you actually seen the trailer?
That's what I'm saying. I haven't had time to see it yet, but
It's
didn't,
literally
I didn't
her
see it
standing from a
mentioned
window,
on the
and we eventually see the question mark Kane knock on her door.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
The
And
question
she
mark
picks
umbrella,
up
rather.
the
Actually.
old
Articles that-
Ace
The
bomber
articles
jacket.
I've seen made it seem like it added to the story in some way.
It's just more continuing on the whole thing about the charitable Earth, because you actually get to see the building.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And that was started in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Right. Okay, so it doesn't.
It's a homage
Mhm.
kind of thing, like they've been doing with
Right,
a lot of these
okay.
extended sets to begin with.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I saw a ton of articles making a big deal about it, and I still hadn't seen it, so I thought it was.
It's a lovely little trailer, but it doesn't really seem to be amounting to much unless they're doing another short story again.
So they
It was
made a big deal out of it because it was Sophie Aldred appearing in live action, but
Mhm.
it's not really a big deal, basically.
Yep, and it's it's about as much as the one that they did for
That
a
third
Joe's
Doctor
final
one.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third Doctor one, where they had Joe Jones go back to the maggots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a nice trailer. I liked watching it. I just didn't think it was,
Yeah, it wasn't like earth shattering, but it was a nice trailer.
Gotcha.
It threw in plenty of references that make you go, "Oh, look at that!"
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
I had actually the way I had seen it described was originally as a short film, so I thought you had to buy the DVD to see it.
Like I said, there might be a short episode thing, but no, it's
then I
there's
just looked it up more,
a
and
trailer.
I saw it was the trailer. So
yeah.
So yeah, people referring to it as a short film is really overselling it. It sounds like.
Yep. DBTH. No. DBTH. Don't believe the hype.
Mm-hmm. Why are so many people excitable about little things of Doctor Who news lately?
Because there's so little other news.
Because Doctor Who is being prepared inside the event horizon of a black hole.
Is that why they don't have any leaks? No wonder.
I don't know. While you were on vacation, Bill, we had to shoot down a rumor that had been flooding YouTube about the fact that Chibnall and Whitaker had quit.
Oh yes, I remember seeing that. So was that?
Yeah, we basically went in there and went, "Y'all are believing a bunch of hubbub from nobody. Good day." I walked out.
Or is it just confirmed to be rumor?
Yes. I tracked it back to its origin,
which
and
is
that
one
person
post from
quotes,
one guy.
one post from one guy who quotes an insider.
I was going to say, does the origin start with an M? Because I wouldn't be surprised.
No, it was somebody on the internet claiming it, not one of the magazines.
Mm.
It was then picked up by a bunch of people who ran with it. And it's just a rumor when rumors on why it's happening keep changing from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the accusations as to why it's happening vary wildly. So it's just like, okay, none of you really know anything. You all can shut up and go relax.
Yep.
Exactly.
And like I said, the original person just quoted an insider,
Air
which
quotes.
is an insider is
Big air
never.
quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's the same thing that the frickin' Mirror and the Daily Mail quote when they make wild accusations. So
Mm-hmm. So don't listen to it. Anyway, big finish.
yeah, big finish. Bill, I think that's you.
Oh, am I okay? Oh, it was purple last time I looked at it. Is it blue
Oh,
now?
I re-updated while he was doing the opening thing.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So let me. All right, the latest short trip is out from Big Finish, narrated by Louise Jameson. In it, the Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry Sullivan are trapped on a spaceship that's stuck at full speed and yet can't move. Doctor Who short trips #Harry Sullivan is available now at £2.99 on download only from Big Finish. And out today, Billie Piper comes to Big Finish in her own series. Rose Tyler Dimension Canon is a series that takes place during Series 4 and deals with Rose trying to meet up with the Doctor and the adventures she goes on. Included is The Endless Night by Jonathan Morris, The Flood by Lisa McMullen, Ghost Machines by A.K. Benedict, and The Last Party on Earth by Matt Fitton. Rose Tyler, The Dimension Canon, is available now at £24.99 on CD or $19.99 on download.
I cannot take that name seriously. I
Yep.
cannot. My brain immediately replaces it with Super Dimension Canon Rose Tyler.
See, I'm getting Rose Tyler hyperdimensional space cannon.
Hmm.
I just can't take it. And then I wonder what would happen if somebody tried to take Billie Piper and turn her into an anime character. Yeah. Oh, still, it's an interesting work to have it. They're trying to move parallel to Series 4.
Mm-hmm.
If they do it right, there'd be a bunch of references, like
There
her
should be a lot of
seeing.
scenes of her screaming Doctor.
Hmm. Or it'd be nice if they had a brief like appearance by Catherine Tate, where
Yeah.
the scene from one of the episodes where she literally bumps into Rose.
Mm-hmm.
That would be amazing
Mm.
if they did it that way.
Something should
Just
be on someone's back.
just the whole cross-referencing it from the other end would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us to Geek Talk. And while I
Yes,
didn't
it
write it
does.
in, I think all three of us have something. What I would like to talk about first, considering we do television streaming first, is that I managed to watch part, if not all of, the new Dark Crystal series on Netflix. You guys have heard of this, right?
Yes. Matter of fact, there's a strategy game out.
Anyway, as a fan of the original Dark Crystal, I'm not the uber fan, but I've seen it about a dozen times.
Mm.
I can tell you that the puppeteering in this one is not quite as good as the original movie. The Gelflings seem a little more wooden than the original version, where they were pretty streamlined. But then again, the original movie only had to make two of them, and they had to
The
make about
original
100 of them. What?
The original movie was Jim Henson, so your
Yeah.
comment about the puppetry is not surprising.
I thought it was still Jim Henson Productions that
Oh, is
made.
it? Is it?
Yeah, it should have been still Jim Henson Productions that made this.
Is he still? I didn't even know he was still around.
He's
Well,
not
he's
around. His
not around.
production house
Oh,
is,
okay.
Bill.
So
His kids have been running the production house for
That's
decades
not
now,
the
dude.
same.
It's
That's
produced by Netflix and the Jim Henson Company.
That's not the same.
The people he trained are still running the company.
Yeah.
But he's not the director, definitely. Then
Well, I'm not sure how much of his own stuff he directed, to be honest. He was mostly the guy who ran stuff in the background and helped write the story.
Uh,
I think his
it's
son started taking over directing before he even passed on.
hmm And remember, he never did it all by himself.
Yeah, never.
Except for I think maybe his first like 2-3 years where it was just Kermit.
Yoda was
But
with him.
but by the time they got to the Muppet Show, he had a team of people to do this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever one of these guys would quit or retire, they would spend a year or two training
The new one.
a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
The only person who didn't have a replacement was Henson himself. And they either retired characters or eventually found a vocal replacement.
Because there's no way you can permanently cancel Kermit.
Mm-hmm.
Hey ho.
Yeah, Kermit was one they had to find a replacement for, and I think they retired Ernie, didn't they? Of Bert and Ernie. But
Yeah,
anyway,
if so, I hadn't heard about it.
Not that
the
I'm aware
thing
of.
is,
They've kept them both of them around, but yeah,
okay, I thought they were planning to originally.
maybe. But they've kept them.
Anyway, like I said, they're a little more wooden, but there's a whole bunch of them in this one. There isn't just two Gelflings. There's like 50 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more they had to do. The voice acting in there is really interesting.
I'm looking at the
You've got
cast, and it's a really star-studded cast.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
you've got Eddie Izzard, Helena Bonham Carter, Mark Hamill,
Mm-hmm.
Simon Pegg.
Yep. Lena Headey.
Yeah, there's huge amount of people that are in this doing voices.
Sigourney Weaver. Damn.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a huge amount of people that are working on this. It's a 10 episode series. Um, and I don't know. I think they're planning on doing more. I think this is the
There's a
first
possibility of doing more. And as I mentioned, they made a strategy game, I think only for the Switch for some odd reason, based on this particular series. And I
And
think they got a lot of the same voice actors in there for that too.
even though they've recast them, some of the characters from the original Dark Crystal are in there.
Hmm.
Including I think called the Chamberlain, who every person that's ever seen the Dark Crystal remembers the Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in there, and yeah, God, that one just freaked me out. Including Agra, the person that ran the observatory in the original one's in there, and you can see a whole bunch of different things. So it's interesting. This works as a prequel to the original movie. So you get to see not only are there a bunch of Gelflings, but there's a whole bunch of different clans. And the clans are not necessarily friendly with each other.
Which would probably explain why so few of them were around for the main movie then.
Well, by that point, there was only 2 left. Remember, the Skeksis like to drain Gelflings and drink their essence.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, a lot of this has the Skeksis playing the clans off each other before they decide to basically go hyper aggro. Because you also have Mark Hamill playing the scientist that invents the big crab creatures that the Skeksis use as soldiers. And you get to see him in the process of inventing them. So, yeah. It's all interesting. It's definitely
Happy, joy.
if you like the original and you can stand slightly less expression-y characters, then yeah, I would recommend watching this because it's at least interesting. Some of it's apparently based on the Dark Crystal comics.
Yeah, they seem to be tying things together with this, from what I hear from Aaron.
Mm-hmm. She burned through the entire series in like 3 days.
She's would have been the go-to person for Dark Crystal stuff, but yeah.
Yes, she would be the one to do this if she was on the podcast. But
If she
she's
wasn't
not.
working nights now.
Yep. She's not. I am. I only watch little bits and pieces. I'll probably sit down and watch it in its entirety somewhere in the next couple of weeks. But as you know, I've had a rather busy week. I wasn't able to do it myself.
Mm.
But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of the original and you want more of the world and the story behind it. This is definitely up your alley.
Yep.
Okay, from there we go to video games.
All right, so that's going to go to me. I do have an image ready because we're going to talk about Wolfenstein game, and there's certain imagery that comes with World War II that, let's just say, we're going to play it safe. So I play the Spirit Destiny. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to try and revisit it because I had to actually end it an episode early. The reason I had to end it an episode early is because of how they built the game at certain difficulties. So to explain the game, most of you are aware how like Doom works. You have like 10 different guns, so you collect them throughout the levels. You get ammo here and there and everywhere, and then you fight off all kinds of baddies and try to get to the end exit. That's more or less how Wolfenstein works, and more or less how Spirit Destiny works. First problem shows up with the fact that there's only 3 weapons I'm aware of in the entire game for you. You always start with, actually 4 technically. You always start with a knife in case you're out of ammo, useless. You also have a pistol, a machine gun, and a chain gun if you can find it. The major difference between pistol and machine gun is that you can hold down the mouse and you can fire off 2 shots a second with the machine gun. And doing the same thing with the chain gun allows you to make 4 shots per second, essentially. The other problem with weapons in this game is the hit detection is very questionable. Basically, you're supposed to aim straight forward. There's no real up or down because this is an old enough game. But whether or not it's actually going to hit is just highly debated, and sometimes enemies will literally just ignore you for several shots before suddenly going, oh wait, you're hitting me, plop.
Hello.
And hello, Tim. So add on top of this particular gun issue with Spirit Destiny, you also get this one particular enemy. I found out now. Originally, I thought they were vampires. Then I thought they were robots. They're apparently mutants for the German army. They are pasty pale white. They have purple blood, and let's just say they'll hail you as a gun in their chest shoots at you, which is really awkward. But they take a lot of the damage, and their hits can vary from barely scraping you to taking core of your health per shot, depending on their mood apparently as well. So I'm in the 15th level. There's like 20 levels in the game. About to end the 3rd episode, and all of a sudden I can't get through this level. Immediately what happens is when you walk out of the elevator to get into this level, you are in a hallway with a door in front of you, and the door back to the elevator behind you. And when you look down the hallway to either end, there's a well. With wells and barrels, you can't walk through them, but they are low enough that you can shoot anything behind them. And these mutant guys are walking up and down this thing, at least 4 or 5 thick. If they start hearing anything from you, they'll start coming to investigate. If they aren't already waiting for you, some of them are. So you got these guys that can hit you and kill you with 4 shots, and they're on either side of you, and then when you try to just run it through the doorway, and you realize that it's a chain of doorways, and the position of the door changes, so you might have to run down the hallway, which means you take longer to turn, go to the door, turn again, and then enter the door. Because this is old, you have to be very specific about your controls. Basically, if you're not trying to kill them and being very sneaky, you are going to die. And even if you're being very sneaky, they can sometimes clip through corners and shoot you anyways. So basically, that's how Spirit Destiny ended for me. I might try it again on a lower difficulty because I believe the number one thing that the difficulty changes is the number of enemies, so maybe there'll be less mutants. But I would have to give that a try when I have the time. And maybe I'll revisit Spirit Destiny on another date and try and finish the last quarter of the game. But that's pretty much how my last quarter of the game ended, sadly. The rest of it up to that point was actually pretty fun. There was some unusual enemies with interesting designs and everything going on. The only thing questionable is, of course, it's a World War II game and propaganda on the walls, you know. But if you get past that, it's always a nice little romp for an old game.
All right. Is that everything you have to say about
Uh,
Wolfenstein?
That's all I have for Spirit Destiny. I do have Wolfenstein 3D on the list, so we'll see how 3D treats me as well, maybe one day.
All right. So moving on to the movie section of Geek Talk.
Okay.
That would be Bill.
Yep. So I was finally able to see Captain Marvel. With it not being available on Netflix, I was able to get a DVD from a library.
This is
And
MCU Captain Marvel?
yes. Yeah, not the DC one.
The DC one's called Shazam now.
Technically,
Shazam's
he's
the-
called
Shazam's
Shazam.
the old
That's
man.
Yeah, that's technically the name of the old man and the magic word that he can't actually say himself for names. So yeah.
Yeah, but basically DC and Marvel had been up in arms over the whole Captain Marvel thing for years, and eventually DC said, "Fuck it, you're Marvel, take it. We're just going to rename our Shazam," and they did that in 2011 when they did the new.
Yeah.
But
So
that means that any
yes.
movie coming out since then will be Shazam.
So the MCU's Captain Marvel. Um, yeah, I finally got to see, if it lived up to the hype. One thing that I noticed, and I'm not going to go into a detailed analysis of this because this is kind of what I study, so I paid a lot of attention to it, but it would take too long. It would be a long discussion here. It was a very, very white woman liberal movie, a very liberal individualistic ideal of empowerment, and the one black woman in the movie's shining moment is an inspiring speech to lift up the white woman hero. So that was a little awkward.
Yeah.
That said, the action scenes were amazing. Um, Getting past some of the subtext there, the general plot from a regular story perspective was, it was good. It kept me engaged and interesting in seeing what was next. I would definitely like to see Captain Marvel 2. But more than anything else, I think it made me want to see a Howling Commandos movie. Uh,
Technically, didn't we get one of those in like the first Captain America?
Kind of, sorta.
I mean,
It was still mostly focused on Captain America.
Howling Commandos, I would say, generally would mean Nick Fury after the war, leading a team before Shield.
Because
So I wouldn't say we have that yet.
Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, I thought was World War II era.
I think
It's
there's that
changed and updated
after.
every time they come
Mhm.
back to it.
I guess I think I usually hear the Howling Commandos referenced as like hunting Nazis after the war, like in South America or whatever.
Yeah, it's usually after the
I'm
war.
sure. I mean, I honestly don't know when his first comic was published or if it was all after the fact anyway. But yeah, he was either way.
I want to say Nick
Um,
Fury as a comic book character standalone with the Howling Commandos might have been a 70s thing.
mm,
The separate Nick Fury's Howling Commandos was a 2005 series.
okay.
I'm sure it's older than that.
The original Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos was World War II era.
Okay.
So
As
yeah,
in
that's a
published
little
World
bit
War II
awkward. That
or
doesn't
just.
quite fit MCU.
Mhm. I mean, an MCU takes a lot of liberties. I think they technically haven't introduced him as non-aging yet, but they do talk about him as being ex-military, and of course, as you've probably heard, they introduce the origin of the eye patch and everything else. Um, and what I found very interesting in terms of Nick of Fury was just how much of like a cheerful young person he was compared to every version of Nick Fury I've ever seen.
Where he's just a
So
badass, generally
I'm mhm.
slightly pissed badass.
I'm kind of curious how different, like what this version of Fury would be like as a soldier. I'm kind of curious what that would look like. Um,
Okay, so to clarify what I said,
mhm.
Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos was a 60s comic book taking place.
Mm,
Okay.
I'm looking at the first issue now, and it's May 1960.
yeah. I was gonna say it couldn't have been much older than the 70s.
So if it came out in the 60s, I would not be surprised if this was Indiana Jones Nazis rather than Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like after the war Nazis.
Right. Because, yeah, this is the Comics Code Authority. You can't really accurately portray Nazis at that point.
Couldn't actually portray a lot of things at that point.
This is true.
Which is why when they started pushing things for actual education in their special books, Marvel went, "Can we drop the Code Authority?" Did anyone freak
Yep.
out? They didn't. Interesting.
Yeah.
We're dropping the Code
Um,
Authority now for badasses.
so yeah, at one point I caught myself referring to the Skrulls as Zygons because it's just close enough of a plot.
Bad Bill, no biscuit. There's
I mean,
big differences. One has a big forehead, the other one has a big chin, and one's orange and the other one's green.
And the suckers.
And the
mhm.
suckers, yes.
But yeah, the Skrulls were a lot less aggressive than I expected, which is kind of necessary to fit in with the way the plot of the story. Um,
It's a bit different from the comics, let me tell you.
I'm curious if they're going to retcon that at any point in the future for the sake of another story, or if they're going to leave them be as they are.
They seem to be
If they're
dragging them into another plot, but we'll have to see how that works out because there's been
if the Skrulls
problems.
do like a huge face heel turn,
Right.
it's like, yeah, you've let us in. We've been replacing everybody. We're taking over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'll probably do that if they ever decide to do like a secret invasion plotline.
Hmm.
Oh, and the big thing was whether or not this was better than Wonder Woman. I don't know if it's right to compare them because they're very different types of movies. I would probably say I liked Wonder Woman more, but I would mm, have to watch them both within a
Well,
short time of
yeah,
each
it's
other to
it's
really
hard
judge
to
that.
hard to compare them, but the thing is, everyone was
Yeah,
comparing them. So,
exactly, and it's
mm,
people are comparing them because they're like, oh, there can only be one best superhero in movie, which I don't necessarily agree
Bullshit.
with, and I don't really feel the
Bullshit.
need.
if
I
that's the
don't really
case, then we already
feel
did in the
right.
'90s.
I don't really feel the inherent need to compare them. So that's, they're very different types of movies. I enjoyed them both. Neither one of them were like the best movie of all time either.
Matter of fact, I think we did
What?
this already in the '70s. It was
Mhm.
called Alien, and it rocked. Anyway,
I don't know if that counts as a comic book movie,
the
but
Aliens are a comic book franchise at this point, so yes, it
they
does.
are now. They are indeed.
If there can only be
Um,
one best female hero, yeah, I'm sorry.
um,
Samus Aran. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, the
but
knockoff
yeah.
of her. Okay, sure.
So short version is this is a an individual empowerment movie with kick-ass action scenes. Uh, some comic book references, although they did leave out one that I thought they could have made easily. So if that sounds your cup of tea, you'll probably enjoy it.
Hmm.
I I enjoyed it mostly because of all the background stuff and watching Nick Fury be young Nick Fury,
Hmm.
and seeing Fury and Coulson again was, yeah.
Although, actually, it's been out long enough. I should probably, I probably, it's probably safe to mention the reference that they didn't make that I wish they did. Right?
Mm,
Sure.
The lightning bolt costume. No, there's nothing really to,
Oh,
no
no,
reference
yeah,
to it.
no, no,
they should
no.
have.
They should not. because
Why?
there's a series coming out in the MCU called Miss Marvel,
Yeah,
dealing with the next
but
gen, the new.
That's a totally different character.
so
Yes, but
but
she's using that costume.
but
Not the same costume.
Really?
no, yes,
Yes.
well, but Miss Marvel's costume was inspired in the comics, not in can't be in the MCU, but in the comics, her costume was inspired by Carol Danvers' costume.
Mm.
So it would have been nice if there was a
So it would
connection.
have made sense if Carol Danvers actually had that original costume.
Hmm.
At least for a short time and be seen on Earth wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even saying they would have needed to go that far. I just during the changing montage would have been nice if there was just a reference to it. That's all.
At the very least, yeah.
Tiny thing.
Mm. Yeah, but I consider why they wouldn't want to, because they don't want to get the two people confused.
They
So,
don't want to confuse the people who've never heard of a comic book.
yep.
Grown.
Actually, there's a few of those now, because there's people that are watching the MCU that haven't read the original comics.
Yes, but if they're watching all the movies, it's easily explainable. I don't get this fear of the
No,
newbies.
I get you. And the industry always likes to assume that people are much dumber than they are.
That is to their
That's
error,
that's
yes.
nothing new. That's nothing new. So
Actually, I assume that when I'm writing too, because
mm. Well, I mean, remember
You're part of the
this is
problem.
this is the same industry that thought that people would be too confused if there was a version of a character on the CW and that same character also appeared in a movie played by a different actor. So they had to kill off all the ones in the CW.
I'm not. You're talking about Deadshot.
Deadshot, Waller, Scuttlebutt is that's why Deathstroke stopped showing up on the show.
Hmm. That was the reason, and then someone else took over as head of Warner Brothers,
Hmm.
like a year later, which is why there's a whole bunch of Batman references going on in their
Yeah.
CW now, because they're adding the new series Batwoman.
Mhm.
Yep.
So, do you have
They're
anything
adding.
else? You have anything
Um,
else to say about Captain Marvel?
I'm done.
Okay. All right. So we had a YouTube comment.
Oh yes.
And this was made about 3 weeks ago for our July 17th podcast, Warriors of the Deep, from Sadako24. And they say, I've never thought I'd say this, but you raised a good point about the character work and human story going on with Maddox, the reluctant sync operator. The problem is, once Eric Soward got his hands on the script, it all seemed to degenerate into out and out sociopathy and nihilism, with some bullshit pretense of a moral to it, with the Doctor making some insane pacifist platitudes, and the story having to contrive to kill off any human characters possessing the sanity to disagree with him. I've never been terribly fond of Sayward's grim dark approach, neither have we. You've heard us talk about it. But what makes it worse here is how the story is clearly so desperate to appear downbeat, it has to reduce the Doctor to a pathetic shadow of himself who apparently can't understand why the humans don't want to be part of his pacifist suicide cult. Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with this.
And that was kind of some similar notes that we were hitting on when we were reviewing it.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely some really lackluster character writing going on at that point.
And apparently it was Soward that was behind it. Thank you for telling us that. I actually
Yeah.
did not know it was mostly Soward's stink.
Hmm.
But now that you're saying it, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Freaking Soward can't do anything. You then went on to say it would have been better all around, in my opinion, had Classic Who just ended on the Five Doctors of Legopolis, but then we wouldn't get season 26. And I love season 26.
That is true, but I would
Yeah.
say that the Five Doctors would have been a nice end note. But yeah.
I don't agree with you on that, Matt. The Five Doctors was too cluttered.
Well,
that
Legopolis is not a good
I mean-
spot either because we just got a new Doctor. It's like, why would you stop there?
The four doctors and the archival footage.
Yeah, we also wouldn't have gotten the one Sayward episode I like, and that is Peter Davidson's final episode, Caves of Androzani.
Oh, that's true. That's probably one of his best works, and one of the Peter Davidson's best
He
performances.
didn't write it, but he was the script editor behind it.
Mm.
Imagine if Caves of Androzani was the end of Classic Who.
Oof.
Well, you would have just
the doctor succumbs to poisoning, and then the show ends for 20 years.
God, that would have been depressing.
That really would have been depressing. The people would have been
The
mourning.
end of that would have been Blake's 7 level depressing.
Yeah. Well, it would have been typical of the era then.
Yeah.
Oh, bad thought. Okay,
You're twisting the knife in Randy's wound.
so there's one more thing we need to do before we go on to our summary, our review. I have a rant.
Okay.
And this is based on a news article that I heard earlier this week. Many of you who pay attention to the news has heard this news article as well.
You'll have to be more specific than
It
that.
is about a certain Catholic school in Nashville
Oh.
who has made a decision to remove the Harry Potter book series from its shelves.
That article.
And the quote by the Reverend, the pastor of the school, to do this. And him saying, the curses present magic as both good and evil, which is not true. The curses and spells used in the books are actual curses and spells, which read by a human being risk conjuring evil spirits into the presence of the person reading the texts. How freaking off the rails do you have to be to believe that somebody can cast Wingardium Leviosa and be possessed by a spirit?
The interesting thing is that my ex was also convinced that these spells in Harry Potter were real ones. So I think it's a common thing among certain hardcore religious.
I think it's a
folks.
common thing for people who smell too much of their own farts.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is off the rails insane to me.
These are the same people who really do believe a zombie apocalypse will happen within their lifetime.
He then goes on to say that he consulted with exorcists and the catechism of the Catholic Church before he made this decision.
Here, let me take a
Who I'm pretty
catechism and
sure-
smack you across the face of it, because you
Who
obviously
I'm
didn't
pretty
use it.
sure backed the truck up. Now, I can see some of the other things he said about this, because some of the other things he mentioned is the fact that it does not portray the good guys in a very good light, being more Machiavellian than anything. And that I do agree with. Fuck you, Albus Dumbledore. But he then proceeds what would be a rational thing with this over-the-rail things about the spells being real. I mean, this is the kind of person that 200 years ago would be burning J.K. Rowling at the stake for being a witch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you think we go beyond that we as the human society has gone beyond that level of thought. And then you see bullshit like this.
No, dude, you forgot about the 70s and 80s satanic panic. This
gonna
bullshit
say,
keeps coming back into style for no apparent reason whatsoever.
I was gonna say, as somebody who wrote a paper on that, we have not moved. Who published a paper on that, I should say. We have not moved beyond that as a society.
I keep hoping we have.
No, you gotta remember, stupid is stupid.
Stupid is stupid, and stupid is people that listen to dogma.
Yes.
It's just
As in actual dogma, not the movie.
Oh no, the movie Dogma's great. Freaking love that movie.
Poo demons, everyone. Poo demons.
Pooh Demon and Alan Rickman as the voice of God. But no, I hear this, and I things like this make me lose faith in any decision the human race will ever make.
It doesn't for me, because I'll always realize no matter how stupid is, smarter people always come along and smack them across the back of the head with the book and tell them how dumb they are and move on.
2 words, Donald Trump.
Happens.
No,
It'll
my
self-correct eventually.
issue with this is The Harry Potter books have done more to bring reading back to school-age children than any other book series in the last 20 years.
I'll agree to that.
It started a reading buzz, which, as a reader myself, I was a breath of fresh air to me because reading was considered, you know, you read, nerd. I mean, I got several teased and nicknames for myself because I preferred to curl up with a blue book to kicking a ball around a field. And now, the Harry Potter books brought back children reading, and now we've got the Catholic school going, no, they're evil, burn them. And mind you, this is the same church that gets in trouble every other week for abusing kids sexually.
The religion, yes.
Not the same church location, the same
Yeah.
church as the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about Catholic priests that have abused altar boys and everything.
And then you wonder
So-
why my father left them. Didn't want any
So-
part of that shit.
Basically, what does the church have against kids? They fuck up their lives, and then the one good thing that has happened to them in the last 20 years, they immediately try to
So-
declare being evil.
I will say on that the Catholic Church, if you read up on its history, it's traditionally been primarily a way for the ruling class to keep the people quiet and obedient. And one of the ways that people stop being quiet and stop becoming obedient is reading.
Which is
And
also why Martin
so
Luther
this-
gave them the finger
so
and made the
this-
Lutherans.
this may be
So there you
completely
go.
intentional for in terms of that part.
The Catholic Church once had a purpose, and that was following the fall of the Roman Empire. They were basically the prime political government of Europe for about 400 or 500 years until the other countries could get their acts together.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, once you have power like that, you don't want to give it up. And they've been trying to fight to stay relevant now for basically 1,000 years.
Basically.
And they've been losing the fight with the Protestant Revolution, and that they're still a strong power, but apparently
They're still strong, but they are definitely dwindling as the other groups get bigger.
but they're resorting to sneaky, underhanded tricks, and they have been now for about 200 years. And
It's not
All
working.
I just remember is that this is the same church that specifically kept doing services in Latin because they wanted only the priests to be able to read the Bible and not the general populace.
so do yourself a favor. If you're out there and you're a parent with kids, raise a middle finger to the Catholic Church and get your kids the complete collection of Harry Potter books.
And getting as a Lutheran, I know some of this history, and Martin Luther's the one that went, fuck that, and translated the Bible anyways.
Oh, he wasn't the only one.
He wasn't the only
Yeah.
one, but he was definitely one of the ringleaders on that.
The Protestant churches in general were the main push behind increasing literacy rates in Europe
Yep.
and the U.S. by proxy.
But yeah, buy your kids the Harry Potter books. Have them
And if not the Harry Potter
literate.
books, get them some Tolkien.
Tolkien's a little harder to read.
Or even C.S.
The,
Lewis.
the Hobbit is a good starter.
The Hobbit, yeah.
But-
Yeah.
The
Hobbit's
Hobbit's a
not
good
bad.
starter, but the as a kid that did read the Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
it gets a bit dry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
At
will
spots.
say, I happened to read Tolkien while the Harry Potter books were still coming out. So by the time I had read book 4, I was ready to read the trilogy with no problem.
I always
If they're too young for Goblet of Fire, they're too young for Lord of the Rings.
actually I would say if they're too young for Order of the Phoenix, because that was a big book with a lot of repetitiveness. But no, just let them read, let them be able to make intelligent choices rather than just listening to dogma.
Mhm.
All right, that's
Or
the end of
not
my
even
rant.
Dogma to stop listening to crazy people.
You know, I keep trying to end my rant, and you keep adding on to it.
Well, then end it already. Gosh.
Get on with.
Get on with it.
Which is
Uh,
how I felt about book 5. Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
so speaking of books and getting on with it, stopwatch time. Are we ready?
Who's doing the summary this week?
Bill's trying to excuse him out of it. It's out of it again. I believe I'm
Because
higher
thus
count than
far,
most of you.
um, yeah, Bill's trying to excuse it because he hasn't had a chance to fully watch it in like ages.
Right.
Um, let's see. Matt did one last week. I did it the week before. Tim did it the week before that.
Mhm.
I did it the week before that. Ugh.
Yeah, if I summarize it, it's going to be like a 45
It's
seconds.
pretty much down to Bill and Tim. You want to go for the record, Bill?
I mean, if
Let's.
Bill really doesn't want to do it, then
You'll do it.
like I wasn't expecting to do it, but
I can do it.
All
I
right,
can
you
do
want
it.
to do it, Randy?
I'm going
Alright.
to try to make this the minute summary.
Okay. I'm ready when you are.
Go ahead. Start up the stopwatch.
All right,
Go ahead and
3,
get it ready.
2, 1, go.
The TARDIS is forced to land in the lair of the Celestial Toymaker, who captures them and forces them to play games. Steven and Dodo are forced to play horrible versions of things like hopscotch and musical chairs, while the Doctor has to play a logic puzzle. They go through and eventually find the TARDIS, while the Doctor, who is made invisible, intangible, and mute for a good chunk of the episodes, eventually manages to trick the Celestial Toymaker into basically having him make the final move from inside the TARDIS, which blows up his toy palace and basically forces him to start over from scratch while they get away. The end.
43
Wow.
seconds.
Okay. Yes.
Randy feels
I
good about himself today.
I set a goal and I matched it.
Okay.
Let's talk.
Hooray!
That's
Let's
about
go.
as long as my summary would have been, I think.
That's all you really need to know. This episode is freaking straightforward.
It
There's
is.
not a lot of subplot in this. You basically have two stories. You've got the Doctor playing the tournament, and he's invisible and mute for most of it, so it's mostly Celestial Toymaker talking to himself. And then you've got
And
them playing the
with
games with these
themselves, to be
psychotic.
honest, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we liked about the serial overall. Bill, you are first.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I'll actually go with why I watched this episode so long ago, and that was that I really like stories where they go outside of space and time and they do something unique and impossible and something you can only really do if you have a TARDIS or if you have Q or some other thing like that. And
Something weird and trippy.
yeah, and this is if you don't count Edge of Destruction, which takes place on the TARDIS, this is the first episode of Doctor Who that's really like that, where they really go and push the boundaries of what travel through space and time is. So that I really liked.
All right. Tim?
Something I really liked about this episode. I really liked Michael Goff's performance as the
God damn
Celestial
it.
Toymaker.
I
Despite the
was
fact that he was only really in, I only got to see him in one episode, and the rest were the telesnaps. But
Thank you, Tim, for taking the one thing I liked about this serial.
well, to be fair, I didn't really like much about this serial myself.
Yeah. Michael Gough, of course, most modern people will remember him as being Alfred the Butler from the Tim Burton
I was
Batman
going to say
movies.
not necessarily that modern. It's a certain generation now.
It's
So
it's still modern, as in it's been like the last
because Gen
few
Z
decades.
Gen Z is only going to think of Sean Pertwee. Well, Sean Pertwee and whoever plays him in The Snyderverse. I don't
And
know
Jeremy
what it
Irons.
is. Sure.
Jeremy Irons
Yeah,
played
you're right.
him
You're
in
right.
the Nolan verse.
No,
You're
that
right.
was Michael
Snyderverse.
Caine.
Michael Caine. Yeah, Michael
Yeah.
Caine.
So
So
you
those
see
three are going to be the ones people are going to remember
see my point.
modernly.
He appeared in 4 movies, which is more than anyone else, and it was an extremely iconic Alfred. But he's far from the most recent.
Yes, but more modern, as in that's the last thing I remember seeing Michael go.
Mm-hmm.
He is no longer with us, by the way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember. An article on that.
He
It looks like
died
he's done
in
something
2011.
since then, but not that I've seen.
Let's see. He was in Alice in Wonderland in 2010 as a voice only. Corpse Bride as a voice.
Oh, I may have seen 99 Sleepy Hollow. I think I have seen that actually, but I didn't notice him.
But he did What Rats Won't Do, which I don't know. St. Ives, The Cherry Orchard, and Sleepy Hollow. And then The Strange Case of Delphina Patoka or The Mystery of Chopin. Yeah, I didn't see any of that. And it's not, what you would consider most geeks would have gone to see. The last big geek thing he did, other than voices, is Alfred the Butler in the Batman movies, in both the Burton and the Schumacher era.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he bridged the gap. Just like Pat Hingle is Commissioner Gordon. The gap from Burton to Schumacher.
His career spanned over 50 years.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's a great actor, and from what I can see from the telesnaps, it looked like he played a great villain in this.
Yeah.
Not that I could tell too much, because
Only got
fucking
one
telesnaps.
solid episode of
Yeah.
actually seen it.
Yep.
But he had that great look in his eye, I
Yes,
think.
he did.
And
All
he had
right, Matt.
a very interesting poise. Thing overall I enjoyed. Gosh. I do know the visuals kind of hurt it, but I did like the kind of twisted puzzling that did take place beyond just the games themselves for the companions there's obviously like stuff within stuff like there seems to be like a tangent of some repeat people within the Toymaker's cabal of dolls and other machinations to try and mess with people. As a matter of fact, I think the one guy repeated 3 times, didn't he?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Cyril.
Yeah, Cyril. He came back as a kid at the end. He was in the middle. He was like a
You first
kid,
see him as the Knave of Hearts
and
in
the
the
first Knave of
second
Hearts, and then the
episode.
middle he was the sleeping kitchen boy.
Yep. And then finally the naughty schoolboy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some interesting stuff going on with some of those characters and stuff. It's a pity that we didn't have any decent revisitings to figure out what was actually going on there.
It's also too bad they had somebody in his 30s trying to play somebody that was basically supposed to be about 10.
I
Yeah.
think that was supposed to be part of the joke with that particular character, but yeah.
So what I liked, I guess, on the serial is most of the costume of the Toymaker's toys, clowns, the royal family of hearts, the kitchen lady, and the soldier all had really nice looking costumes.
Yeah,
Some
they
less,
were
some
going a
of
few steps beyond to try and come up with something original and interesting looking.
I would talk about the Celestial Toymaker's costume, but we're going to get to that in the what we
Okay.
disliked.
Yeah, we'll cover that, I'm sure.
Yep. Which is where we're going now. What we disliked about the serial. Bill, are you going to start with the elephant in the room, or you got something else?
I'm not, because I wasn't quite as aware of it when I actually watched the episode as I should have been, so it would not be right for me to mention it. But I think I'm going to talk about the way it drags on and nothing happens, and
I'm not sure if that's the case if we had the full episodes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is gonna be my complaint too. I guess is that it does feel like it drags on and seems to be going nowhere. But I really do think that's because there's a lot of physical stuff going on and not so much dialogue. Because I noticed they had to scroll a lot of stuff this time
Yep.
around at the bottom of the screen to tell us what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately it's I don't know. I still always get the impression of it's the doctor kind of treading water, literally stalling for time,
Well, mind you,
and then
part of the issue is that Hartnell had a vacation in the middle of
yeah,
this serial,
of course,
and I
that's
think it might have been because he was sick.
Quite
yeah.
possibly.
There's the meta reasons for that. That's why the doctor's invisible, of course. But
And mute.
yeah, yeah, I think he goes back and forth between being mute or not. I believe.
He goes mute for like the
Mhm.
I want to say the later part of the second episode into the fourth episode.
Shortly into the beginning of the second episode, into the fourth, yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
even the rest of it, it feels more like running in place. Like it doesn't feel like, completing an arc and achieving a goal. It feels like, yes, they have a goal of getting out, but it's not a maze. Eventually getting out really just means the toy maker gets bored or does something stupid rather than an actual getting out of a trap of some sort. So
Well,
it feels like
it's mostly
running
the
in
fact
place.
that the other characters, the toy maker's toys,
Mhm.
screw up. Um,
Yeah, it's usually what bites them.
yeah, because remember the first one with the clowns, they discover that they were cheating with a fake blindfold and are forced to go through it regularly and fail.
Mm.
The second one, the King and Queen of Hearts and everybody just keeps squabbling among themselves and eventually wind up picking a chair that doesn't work, losing out. And then the third one, um,
That was the soldier and the kitchen lady.
they kept squabbling among themselves, and
They got so heated that they gave away the secret spot,
mm-hmm,
and then they
and
followed them into technically a second trap, and essentially the companions tricked them into coming into the trap with them, and then they managed to escape.
mm-hmm.
And describing it that way almost makes it sound worse in the sense that it's not how clever what is it, Stephen and Dodo are. It's how unclever the uh, obstacles that they're supposed to overcome
Well, the
are.
last obstacle in particular,
Yeah.
there did need to be something there, and they did. The companions were smart enough in the last one to out trick
Mhm.
the enemies on that. So at least the
Yeah,
last one was good
and
on them.
it was supposed to underscore that these people were actually human, so to speak, or
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
they were actual people that the toy maker had already captured, and thus had will of their own to make mistakes. They weren't pleasant people by any stretch of the imagination,
I'm sure
Mhm.
being imprisoned there for a long period of time didn't help that matter any
but
either.
they weren't just the toy maker's constructs.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny thing is, even just describing it that way, I could almost see like writing in some sort of allegory about like collaborators during wartime or something. And I'm pretty sure there's nothing like that in this episode, but that might be reading too much into it because that's more my
Yeah,
own
that feels like a
idea than
stretch.
that's
Yeah, it
not
does.
it's not required for it to be a good story.
All
It would
right,
have added to it though.
Tim. What about you? What did you dislike about the serial? And are you going to go right for the elephant in the room?
You mean the telesnap? No, I'm
No,
not gonna do that.
that's not what I'm referring to. But
Oh, then.
what didn't you
Well,
like, Tim?
what I didn't like was the fact that Stephen Dodo and even the Doctor never really beat their games, except for just blind luck happenstance, plot armor, and a bunch of button mashing to start a phrase.
That basically sounds like what Bill was complaining about.
And then there were
A
still a
little
few
bit
instances
like
where that
but,
proved not be the case, but yeah, there was a little bit of it, at least with the companions for sure.
yeah, like the whole thing with the chairs. It would have been more interesting if they had like observed the chairs and found a clue like in that. And also, it didn't help that Steven and Dodo were constantly arguing with each other over
Well,
how
Dodo
to
apparently
proceed.
was completely and totally naive. Steven's like, yeah, let's not tell them about the other dolls. And Dodo's like,
And
but there's these
Dodo's
other
actually,
dolls.
yeah, Dodo's the complete and total bumbling idiot that foot and mouths like 3 times.
Yeah.
It's just like, really?
Yeah, you really want to smack her one in this. Honest to God.
It's like, do you ever stop not shouting all of the plot points in front of the enemy?
Well, that's the thing. She never really saw them as the enemies. She saw them as, oh, well, they're, just our game opponents, not the enemy.
Thing
But
is, the thing is that she knows that they're the enemy because she's literally watching as these dolls are getting fried on chairs. It's literally a game of life or death, and she's still seeing it as a game. It's like, no. How does reality not set in at this point?
okay, Matt, how about you? What did you dislike about the serial? Are
I,
you
I
going
was
to
I
be
was I was kind of with Bill already. So,
okay? All right, so it's down to me.
Yep. Go
All
ahead.
right.
Take it.
The elephant in the room. Let's talk racism. Let's talk racism in Doctor Who, because there's 2 instances in this case.
In particular, in this story, yes.
One of which is one line, the other of which you is in the very freaking title.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the one line. It is in episode 2.
Yep.
The King of Hearts, trying to choose a chair, says an old nursery rhyme.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Catch a something by the toe.
And he started mumbling that quite liberally.
And
But
if you paid attention to the Walking Dead controversy, what was it, maybe a year ago now, you probably are aware of this.
Mm-hmm. And it's a word.
Let's say that only black people can say it.
It's not a tiger.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a tiger.
Although it
Not a
has
giant
most of
cat.
the letters in tiger, doesn't have the T, and has an extra G. But we're not going to say it because we're all white people.
Yeah, we're not allowed. But the King of Hearts felt like he could mumble it apparently at the time, and I'll partially blame this on the '60s because also apparently my grandmother used to know that nursery rhyme with that word in it.
Mm-hmm.
And even she was worried when me and my sister would start doing it, and then she's like, "Oh, tiger, okay."
Yeah.
Okay, that changed. Thank goodness.
yeah, that's the thing. Somewhere along the line, somebody came to common sense and changed it to tiger.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would also blame the fact that this is a British show, whereas Britain wasn't probably feeling it as quickly as America was with the whole, going on.
Well, this was 64, 65.
Yeah, I want to say this was like mid '60s for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Even America was a few years out from the riots, but still.
It was still not that uncommon in America at the time.
Sadly.
Now let's talk about the other case of racism. Let's look at the name, the Celestial Toymaker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on paper, that looks like you're talking about a toy maker, that's beyond the dimension.
Yeah.
Some kind of celestial realm.
Yeah.
In the stars.
But then you look at it in retrospect to Michael Goh's costume. Celestial is also a racist term for a Chinese person.
Huh.
It is, if you've ever watched the HBO series Deadwood, you hear it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Because when does that take place? That was like
It's the
I
1870s,
was gonna say
1880s.
the 1800s or something. In which case, yeah, I expected it to be a little more common back then, probably.
Mm-hmm. And there is a group of Chinese people that are in Deadwood.
Mm.
So you hear them go, "I don't know about you Celestials," in that 19th century redneck cowboy voice.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it was said a lot by the head of the um, local pleasure house, who was an asshole character to begin with.
Yeah.
But still, when you put those two together, you're like, oh my God, they're making a racist statement against Chinese right in the freaking title. Had Michael Goh not been wearing a Chinese outfit and looked like something like Guardian meets Toyman,
And wasn't the set Chinese themed? At least the set where you first see the
little
Toymaker?
bits and pieces.
Maybe the little tiny pieces, but not the major pieces.
There one of them had like a small Chinese gong. But the rest of it didn't really look. It
Yeah.
looked kind of.
They tended to avoid it a lot with the set pieces for the most part, with a few little things here or there. But yeah, in particular, if it wasn't for the costuming, you could have gotten away with this, and you wouldn't have had any issue because it would have been what you immediately think when you're thinking sci-fi.
Uh-huh.
But then you put this costume on him, and if you happen to know some more history behind the use of that word, then you can start going, oh.
We just lost the person who was speaking, or whose turn it was anyway.
We lost Randy.
Yep.
Oop. Well, hopefully he gets back soon. But yeah, if they would have switched out this outfit in particular with something a little more like a space suit with a toy maker's apron or something, you totally would have gone by without this without any kind of connotations whatsoever, and just be like, oh, I get it. It's that kind of thing. Yes, they're like an interdimensional toy maker with weird powers and is apparently immortal. Sure, we can go with that. But yeah, with this particular costume, it does have a rather bad connotation attached. If you're going to have that name also attached to the character. Sadly. Oh wow. I think we've had a complete and total shutdown of Discord. What's going on? There we go. I hope okay, it looks like the connection's fine. I'm starting to wonder why everyone was suddenly quiet. Waiting for it to hopefully reconnect here. I'm hoping we didn't have a complete disconnect of the stream. Looks like it's still fine at the moment. Actually going to check my phone really quick and make sure. Yeah, I'm still getting connection on my phone, at least at the moment. Sorry about this, folks. We seem to be having connection difficulties at this particular time. Like I said, I don't see it on my end, at least, outside of Discord suddenly shutting down. Here it comes.
Oh, our streamer is back.
Yeah, it seems like Discord just suddenly had a fart. Because I didn't see any, unless I missed it, I didn't see any disconnect on Twitch's end.
Ah.
So I think that was purely a Discord thing. So hopefully Randy will be back. I was basically going over the fact that if you would just switch this costume like to a astronaut suit with a toy maker's apron or something like that, you could have totally gone away with this without any connotations. But yeah, the way they dressed him up, oof.
Hello.
And Randy's back.
And Randy's back.
Apparently Discord booted you and Matt, and then...
Yeah, apparently our local Discord server
must have just booted, yeah.
Just died for like 3 minutes.
Matt was just telling us how his connection to Twitch never ended.
Yeah.
So definitely Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It seems to have been a Discord hiccup, so hopefully that's done.
I checked the rest of the internet. My internet was up and running. It was only Discord that was crashed.
Yep, I was checking my phone like, I don't see anything going on here.
Yeah, it was probably just a server that just blew
I have
bracket.
something to download when I went to get done with the stream. Holy shit. Sorry. They are making a Fist of the North Star game for mobile phones.
Anyway,
Yeah,
as
anyway.
we were on the subject of the racism.
As I was
Yes.
mentioning, if they would have changed the costume, you could have skipped all the connotations.
Yep, but they didn't.
And I think Big Finish has tried to kind of cover up that after the fact by changing the costume.
Mm,
But the character is still remembered for
having the
what it was
costume.
made for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it might not have even been the producer's idea. It could have just been the costume designer. Oh, a Celestial Toymaker. Okay.
Yeah, it could have just been someone going tongue in cheek, and they actually went with it. And it's like, oh wait, are you sure about
Oh,
that?
well, this is what we got. Okay.
If I remember right, I've seen people, and I don't, well, I believe they were quoting direct, like that they had gotten the script in some manner, mentioning that the Chinese aspects were included in the script.
Okay.
Oh.
So
I
it's
don't have that in front of me, but I remember
Oh,
reading that.
so the script
So-
was even worse.
so yeah, it's apparently the problem of Brian Hale and David Tosh. Got it.
Yikes.
Yeah.
All I can say is yikes.
Anyway, let's move on to favorite scene before our Discord dies again.
Don't burp, Discord, don't burp.
I think that's the one thing I didn't plan ahead. Why would that be? Partially the fact that I can't think of one. Partially the fact that I didn't get to rewatch this. I'm going to pass.
Okay, Tim.
Let me think about this. And
Matt, while Tim's thinking, you start thinking.
yeah.
Well, I've already got mine.
Okay, why don't you go,
Okay.
Matt, and we'll come back to Tim.
Yeah, you'll have to come back to me. Yeah, just come back to me.
All right, my favorite scene is going to be when a Tweedledum looking man-child slips and dies on his own trap because,
Damn it!
remember kids,
Damn it!
cheaters never
Damn it!
win.
Damn it! God damn you, Matt! I'm gonna have to kick you in the dick when I see you. Drive up there. I know where you live.
Don't break a foot on the way. Huh?
Oh, excuse me. You can't see it, but I'm flipping you off right now.
Infighting.
Can't hear me? Let me turn it up.
Oh, if I get it in stereo, fantastic.
If I had more arms, it'd be in surround sound. Oh, God, that was mine. I'm going to go with you on that one. The fact that that is a thoroughly unlikable character.
Yeah, that was a thoroughly unlikable character, and it just got all the comeuppance.
And yeah, it's just, I win.
Boom.
See, that moment was a bit too contrived for me.
I didn't think so myself. You know,
The guy was laying so many things. It's just like, okay, what's gonna bite him? Is it gonna be the slip stuff? It is the slip stuff. Boom, boom. Oh yeah.
because I could see somebody being heady in the fact that they just beat this, they just, won, and forgetting the fact that they had just put down some slippery powder 3 minutes ago.
Let's face the facts. This particular minion was always kind of man-childish from the get-go, so it wouldn't be surprising that he finally thinks he's won and it gets to his head.
Yeah, actually, that was the least contrived out of most of this.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think the let's sit down in the chair together was the more contrived one.
Yeah, that was the most contrived piece of work. Oh, look, it's not telling anything. It's not threatening at all. Boom.
Because I can tell you, my favorite scene wouldn't have involved episode 1 because I don't like clowns.
See, those clowns didn't bother me as much, although it was weird that one of them wouldn't talk and kept honking.
No, it's not. That was a standard clown thing.
I know it's a standard clown thing, but it's something that weirds me out. It's like,
Because,
stand back or I hit you with a stick.
Because my favorite Marx brother is Harpo, and he only talks.
See, he's not in a clown makeup though.
No,
and that
he's
adds
not.
the
He's-
extra layer of creep.
Although he kind of looks a bit like a clown because he had that
Curly hair, yeah.
curly yellow hair, but no, his Harpo's expressions were what made it for me.
Yeah. he was a priceless physical actor.
Yes, he was. And I do remember one time when Zeppo, I think, dipped his horn in like lemonade and then put it down his pants and honked it repeatedly. And the look on his face was hysterical. God, the Marx Brothers are great. And I'm
Anywho,
old,
outside
like-
the swordfish. Do you have one yet, Tim?
Yes. I sort of like the scene where Dodo is talking down to the soldier character. There's like, you ought to apologize. Soldiers never apologize. It's like, I apologize.
Not so much talking down as buttering up.
Or
Basically,
talking
she was
in
trying
some
to
direction.
she was trying to get him at his being a decent
Okay.
guy kind of approach.
Yeah, appeal to his chivalry.
Yeah. As a gentleman, that was the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
She was trying to appeal to his gentlemanly side out of the gentleman and the soldier.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of worked.
It worked in their benefit, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to least favorite scene. Bill?
So my least favorite scene is when the Toymaker decides that the doctor needs some help completing the task that the doctor is easily accomplishing already, but the Toymaker decides that the episode is dragging out too long, so he does like half the fucking puzzle for him.
Yeah, well, the reason behind that is he wants the doctor to finish before they get to the TARDIS. And of course, it's basically, it's supposed to be a Chekhov's gun, but still, he does it way too many times.
Yes. And it's like, I mean, even the first time I was the first time, like, he explains it and whatever, and I'm sitting here, and it's like, it's weird. It's like, you set up this puzzle for him to do, and now you are doing it for him. What was the point of it in the first place then? And then as he repeats it, it's just ridiculous.
Mm. All right. Tim, how about you? Least favorite scene?
Least favorite scene, the game with the clowns. Simply because I can't see it.
Yeah, that was very much a physical game, and there's not that much to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like that really was hurt from not having footage.
Yeah, that was some of my least favorite scenes too, but mine's because I don't like clowns.
You
Thank-
you can hate that first episode for multiple layers.
Thank you, freaking Tim Curry.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Matt, how about you? Least favorite scene?
Oh gosh, which one to go with? um. mm, I'm sure this would have been also better with a lot more scenery attached to it. The scene where the soldier and the cook are fighting, and there's apparently stuff going all over the place, including glasses and bowls and stuff breaking. But we don't see a bit of it. You just mostly see stills of the soldier standing on a chair.
All right.
And you occasionally see a still of the kitchen woman looking like she's annoyed. And it's just like, I
All
really
right,
don't,
so
I don't
my-
really don't know for sure what's going on here, and it doesn't seem like they're helping at all.
So my least favorite scene is the very end of it, where the doctor is supposed to call out the final move to the puzzle to end everything. And the reason I dislike this scene is I had read the novelization of this years before I've seen this episode. So I had it in my head how that would sound. And I'm very disappointed by the reality where he just basically yells it outside the TARDIS door. Because he even says, I imitated the Toymaker's voice. I didn't hear an imitation there, did you?
No.
No, I think he also has to go further into it because even they were calling him on it and went, well, I had to do it in a tone where it felt like it was serious and not like I was playing a game. It's like,
But he still
really?
says he had to do it in the Toymaker's voice, and he doesn't.
Yeah, that kind of fell apart.
That was kind of disappointing for me, yes. All right. Go ahead, Tim.
Maybe they were counting on the fact that back then people couldn't rewind their TiVos.
Maybe. And maybe it was the fact that Hartnell just didn't do it, and they only had one take for it.
Mm-hmm. That's also a major possibility with this show in particular.
Yeah, it just...
You would have thought someone could have gone in there and done a quick audio edit, but, well.
Yep. Anyway, that wraps up our likes and dislikes. Let's go to our final thoughts. Bill.
Okay. While I really enjoyed the premise of the episode, the execution left a lot to be desired. Even ignoring the racial aspects, which are hard to ignore once you know of them. But again, when I first watched this, I wasn't aware of them. It still fails to entertain, and it fails to tell a satisfying story, which are two of the things you expect as a bare minimum from any serial. Uh, Add that to some of the technical issues, such as it being forced to be a Dr. Light episode, probably not planned, uh, and everything else, and it's not a good package, and uh, did it yeah, it was not the best way for this character to go down on screen, and it's probably why no one seems to have ever considered bringing it back for an on-screen appearance.
Is that everything, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay, Tim?
Okay, so the fact that this is like 90% telesnaps is a drug in its favor. The fact that
It's 75% telesnap.
75%.
Yep, 3 episodes out of 4.
The fact that this is a Dr. Light episode is another thing that works against it. Dodo and Steven, the idea that it felt like this whole story was just a big tease, like it promised like this great storyline about this mystical celestial, and I'm using the celestial as the good word.
The non-racist version of it. We got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Toymaker, is like what like there was a lot they could do with that, but the games that are presented are just so meh, and the way they're overcome is again, not very clever at all. Like it's like I feel like this episode should have been better, and that's the worst thing about it, is that it had potential, but it didn't live up to it. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay, Matt?
I think the major reason why it doesn't live up to its promises is because there's a lot here missing. That being said, outside of the stuff that's missing, we do have a really excellent final episode. But it is a shame that there's a lot of baggage attached to this too, which, again, if we had a sequel, we could at least bury some of that particular baggage. But there's also that one particular line in episode 2, which, sadly, if I was to go back to that right now, I would probably cut some of that line.
They tried to. Interestingly enough, Peter Purvis did the first narration to replace the missing episode bits.
Mm.
When they first came out with this, he made sure he talked over that line.
I could see probably why, because I'm pretty sure even he's just like, ooh, shoot, yeah. Let's try to hide that, shall we? But yeah, that'd be like the first thing. The one thing I would cut is that. I'm not sure if I blame. I'm not sure. I don't think I can blame the actors as much as I can blame the writers on this one because it seems like a lot of this stuff was coming from the writers. And again, at the time, it wasn't as negative as it would have been, like, say, a couple years later. But that being what it is, there is a lot of interesting stuff here. It's a shame that a good portion of it is missing because there's so much physical stuff going on that you just really can't see it, and words scrolling across the bottom of the screen and the occasional still image updating does not make up for it.
Anything else, Matt?
Outside of that, the final episode is a joy to see because we finally get to see some of the good parts finally shine through, like the acting of our main villain and the actually kind of interesting and varied sets that we got to have here. Too bad we didn't get to see the rest of them.
All right, done.
That's good for me.
All right. So my opinion is, putting the racism aside because that's mostly a product of its era.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very action-oriented episode, and as such, suffers horribly from being reduced to telesnaps for its first 3 episodes.
Yep.
The concept itself is interesting, and the actor they've got to play the villain is a great choice.
Mm-hmm.
But the realization of it, I think, lacked a bit of work. Having the doctor have to vanish and be mute for a good chunk of it did not help it to become anything interesting. And it basically felt like a wasted opportunity for most of the episode. Even in my thought, episode 4, while being better because you could see what was going on, still felt like a wasted opportunity. It is something that could have been great, but gets bogged down by minutia. Okay, voting. Bill.
I'm trying to decide if 1.5 out of 5 is too harsh, and there's no voice in my head telling me to move it up, so I guess that's what I'll stick with.
Ouch.
Oof.
All right. Tim.
Well, I still gotta be nice, so I'm gonna give this 2 stars.
Oh, Tim giving it a 2-star is, oh my God. Matt.
That's love for Tim, and I'm actually right there with Tim. I'm a 2-star. If the footage came back, it probably could almost push to a 4-star. But yeah, yikes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that telesnaps just hurt it, just kill it dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just way too much visual action that you just lose. Oh,
Yeah.
God. And yeah, it might have been a 4 with the racism bumped down to a 4. Telesnaps, I can't give it a 2.5. I don't know if I can give it a 2. I think I have to go with Bill on this and give it a 1.5.
Oof.
It's just, there's too much lost. And with that, that averages out to a 1.8. Dear Lord.
Plop.
A 1.8 is going to put it
Hello, Laura Recorder.
dang near the bottom of our list. I am actually going to sort this for the first time in a while. Because I want to see how low did this go. So let's go by rating.
Worst game of Limbo ever.
How low can it go? And with a 1.8, it comes out at number 303 out of 309 things reviewed.
Ooh.
It is on par with The Snowmen and Torchwood Cyberwoman.
Ooh.
It is better than The Name of the Doctor, but is worse than Kill the Moon and Terror of the Vervoids. Yes, it is worse than Vervoids. So there we say it. 303 out of 309. That is all we have to say about the Celestial Toymaker. Bill?
All right. So give us your comments below and let us know if you agree, disagree, love this episode, hate this episode. And of course, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitch.
All right, so next week, putting the racism behind us, we move on to the last missing Hartnell serial. It's The Smugglers, written by Brian Hale. Yes, one of the same writers as this episode.
Oh dear.
And starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, Anna Key Wills as Polly, and Michael Craze as Ben Jackson. We will see you next week.
See you then.
Oh boy.